Dan, I'm going to start with you. Uh, are you concerned at all with the contract problems that the Cowboys have going on?
Well, of course, and I understand Shefty's point that he believes that they're going to get the CD deal done, not only done, but before the season starts. But he's obviously missing valuable training camp time, and we know that especially dynamic athletes, when they miss that time in training camp, what does the season start, and how does September go for them? But the whole conversation about the Cowboys this whole offseason has been about one, not spending, and two, not locking up at least one of the three guys. And the fact that really you throw in Mike McCarthy into that conversation, the four, I guess, most, I don't want to say important, but most integral pieces of this football team, organizationally wise, are playing kind of on a year to year right now. Maybe not Micah, but Dak, obviously, last year of his deal, CD with the unknown and the holdout right now, Mike McCarthy on the final year of his contract. And then Micah doesn't seem like is pushing to get paid right now, but probably can. And so, with a team that has that looming, the pressure of what the expectations are, and I think something that we haven't talked about enough is like this is probably the most competitive training camp, top to bottom, in the NFL this year. Their roster spots competing, at least starting jobs for left tackle, center, I believe right tackle, maybe tailback, the second and third wide receiver spots on offense, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, probably number 3 corner. So like there's a lot of unknown and question mark about some of the really important starting pieces of this football team, on top of where this contract situation sits for 4 of their most important people.
Chad, are you concerned?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I'm concerned, especially not having someone like CeeDee Lamb in camp when there's no security in your number 2 receiver or your number 3 receivers. You want your main guy in camp to build that chemistry with Dak Prescott. The expectations, you already have the star on your helmet. And from what I heard from the owner a while ago is that they were going to be all in this offseason. The market is the market. The market is what it already is. We know what CeeDee Lamb is. He's the top 5 receiver in the NFL. So the numbers shouldn't even matter because you know where he's slotted. You know where you want him to be slotted when it's time to pay him. I'm not sure what's taking so long, but for someone that's always in front of the camera, always being the center of attention, I think he's probably purposely prolonging the contracts. So we're purposely talking about the Cowboys.
That is honestly the only logical explanation for this dragging out as long as it has, Chad. I think that there's 2 ways of looking at this, the short view and the long view. The short view, this season doesn't bother me. The fact that there's been so much turmoil with these contracts. These stars are all competitors. Dak Prescott in particular, you talk about the possibility of him playing without long-term contract security. He has done that before. He has done so at a high level. That is why he is in this position in the first place. His willingness to bet on himself, earlier in his career has resulted in him having this much leverage. So I don't think his performance will suffer as a result. But in the long term, it absolutely concerns me. As we've often discussed, the longer this drags out, the higher the price tag goes and the harder it gets to build this football team if it's particularly top heavy. It doesn't matter which of these stars get paid. It's going to get more and more difficult, especially, by the way, if you let Dak Prescott walk, take a huge cap hit, and you have to go get a quarterback. So for this season, not too worried. I think that they'll be fine. But beyond this season, it is concerning for Cowboys fans.
1, 2,
Okay,
3, 4, 5.
Dan, I want to talk about something that you said earlier this week. You had the Cowboys 8th in the NFC and out of the playoffs. Mina, do you agree with Dan on that?
No, I think they're a playoff team. I mean, Dan's got them A, so he's got them just outside looking in. I've got them as a wild card team. We're not that far apart. But for me, a lot of the concern with the Cowboys is it's reasonable. Dan makes a great point about some of the uncertainty on the offensive line. I think some of those issues and pass protection and run blocking, that's the biggest issue to me on this entire football team, could be mitigated by the fact that this defense, I don't think, will be worse than they were last year. You get Trevon Diggs back, who was your number 1 corner, who missed the season with injury. Deron Bland emerged as a truly good cornerback, playing on the outside and inside when he does. And so I think the secondary remains one of the best in the NFL. This is still one of the best pass rushes in football. Linebacker is a bit of a question mark. Mike Zimmer is a very good and experienced defensive coordinator. So I still think this defense, which was 4th last year in efficiency, will be one of the better units in the NFL. And even if there are some growing pains with the offensive line, I think those can be somewhat mitigated by the fact that I still think this is an elite defense.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is relatively similar to last year. Now, I said this to Fox on Monday, or Tuesday. I don't know what Trayvon is going to. I'm not going to pretend to sit here and know what he's going to be coming off of an ACL. I do think it's different than a quarterback coming off ACL or a Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles. Like, is he going to be Trayvon, who's been one of the best ball hawking corners in all of football? So, like, we'll see if he doesn't skip a beat coming off an injury, but the weakness of this football team, at least, has always been defensively up the middle, so to speak, and it kind of still is. And now that's been exposed a little bit over the last year or two. And then the Cowboys have been really good drafting guys. They have been. I don't know if they're banking on a rookie left tackle and a rookie center being pretty darn good players. That's hard to do in this league with the question mark at right tackle. So, Dak was great last year, but Dak took a lot of sacks last year, or more than he normally does. That doesn't, speak glowingly or make my mind have a ton of ease when it comes to those two rookies in their pass protection situations. And I just think there's teams that I have a little bit more known entities about and probably a little bit more encouragement about some of the things that I have question marks
Of
on.
the success of that team who refuses to take a seat to the back and allow the coaches to coach, allow the players to play, and allow everything to maturate itself throughout a season. He adds too much pressure on the players and the coaches and everyone else around. So it's difficult for them to have success and get to the postseason and be able to focus on the games at hand.
Yeah,
I
hold
wanna
on,
ask
Christine.
specifically-
Let me
yeah.
jump off that, MK. I
Okay.
don't know if your thoughts. I think Chad brings. I've never ever bought into the whole Jerry's too out in the forefront thing, and it's too much about Jerry and the conversation about the Cowboys. But Hembo sent me something about the Cowboys offense. It was a little bit centric to Dak, but I do think in totality, it's hard to go and be as good as they have been in the regular season offensively. I think 3 out of the last 4 years been really good. Their last
Yeah.
3 playoff losses, they've given up, I think, 12 sacks, 5 or 6 interceptions, and Dak has 30 misses. Like 30, just not incompletions, misses. That's weird to me, that you could be that good in the regular season, and then in those playoff games, just completely play to a different brand of football. And I do think there is some credence to the extra and added pressure that comes from ownership, Jerry, front office.
Especially, Dan, when you consider, and I recently rewatched the wild card loss, it was a team-wide meltdown, right? Like, it wasn't
Disaster.
just Dak, it wasn't just the coaching, it wasn't just the defense. Every single part of this football team failed in that game, which does lend some credibility to the argument that it's coming from the top. The reason why I don't think the Cowboys are going to be in the Super Bowl, and I want to be clear, I had them in the playoffs, is they're not built correctly to play the San Francisco 49ers and the Detroit Lions. Those are teams with extremely strong rushing attacks, teams offensively where the coordinators are so brilliant at exploiting linebackers, and that, as good as I think the Cowboys defense is going to be, that is the position where they are the weakness. To me, what that tells me, the fact that they haven't taken that position, they haven't been able to fix it, pardon me, they have tried, is that you aren't really considering your stiffest competition in your own conference. I don't think you can win the Super Bowl unless you're better there.
Yeah, I agree. I even go back to, Chad, you would know this, when we were talking, having the CD Lamb conversation. I remember the Green Bay game last year, the playoff loss. For a quarterback and receiver that, I don't know, CD had, 120 catches last year or something like that? They didn't look to be on the same page at all.
No.
Like,
Yeah,
at
they were
all.
off a little bit.
All. How does that happen?
It was weird.
Listen, the
Right.
games where it the games where it matters most. And I will say this about Dak. I can say this: when it comes to the postseason play, he has to play better. We have to get the Dak that we see in the regular season when it matters the most in the postseason. But again, I think for me, it's been 25 years, if I'm not mistaken, since the Cowboys have won a Super Bowl or have gone far into the
25,
playoffs.
yeah.
I just think the noise from up top, it affects what they want to do down below. Now, when you look at all the other teams that continue to have success in the playoffs, or let's say like the Chiefs that continue to go to the Super Bowls back to back to back, they have great teams offensively, defensively. The Cowboys have the same thing as far as personnel is concerned when it comes to the coaching staff on both sides of the ball. There's no noise coming up from the top. They allow their coaches to coach and they allow their players to play. And I think if a certain individual would just get out the way of the Cowboys and allow the Cowboys to do what they already do, because you already have the star on your helmet, you need no more attention. You are the center of attention because it sells, the product sells itself. I think they'll be fine.
You mentioned the Chiefs. Over the last 3 seasons, the Cowboys have the second best record in the NFL behind only the Chiefs, but of course, they didn't reach the NFC Championship game in any of those seasons.